podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to No Question About That. I am Ed, today with Adam. How's it going, Adam?
Oh, we won, didn't we? It's yeah, I mean, set piece kings. It's going okay.
Look,
the 14th.
I've always said two things. United are great at set pieces and Bruno Fernandes is rubbish. And both these things are definitely true. So, yes, we're apparently great at set pieces. That is what comes from having two set piece coaches, one of whom is doing something, the other is putting the cones out, I think. So, all right, today we're going to talk about job cuts at United, what the strategy looks like, how they're going to get us out this mess, is the pain worth it, and all of that. And I guess the context is another couple hundred redundancies announced at United and planned protests for the Arsenal game coming up in early March. And these two things don't seem to fit together, like what the company is doing and what the fans are seeing, two wildly different things. Something like that sound right?
I mean, how much can you cut to the bone? I think the discussion you sort of had in your Substack this week was sort of the bones of what we were talking about for today. And I guess what you were hinting at across the board is their strategy is running things very lean across all facets. And it creates not much margin for error. I mean, there's not much margin for error with the finances, right? So first off there, the transfer strategy of signing young players to develop, there's not much room for error there with the club's league position. But if you're signing young players, who's supporting them when your squad is already threadbare for quality and experience in prime age? And then with the goodwill of the fans, where are you going to give back something to make it all worth it? And that's something you said about the stadium and whatnot. So I don't know where you want to start, but
there's two kind of things I was thinking about when I was writing that piece. Not to make it all about that, but the one is, so they are doing a financial turnaround. This is classic private equity, the world I know pretty well, which is to strip everything down in order that you make the asset that you're working on more profitable. Ratcliffe, or via his people, has said they just have to make the company profitable. They do and they don't, right? They could run the company, the non-PSR pieces, at a loss forever.
Debate.
Yeah.
It's part of the debate with where ownership has gone.
Yeah.
Is, and that's one of the reasons fans hate the American push into English football, is that they run it strictly like a business. And this is something, again, to prop up that Substack of yours, is that you discuss how much is it a business versus a football club. And we certainly see Manchester United as a social entity. It's where we're talking about lifeblood of the club is its fans. And where do you find that balance in running it? So how much is it to just to turn enough revenue or profit to keep it okay in PSR calculations versus how lean are you running it simply because from a business aspect versus
just
what's
because,
best for the football club?
And it never made much sense to me that Ratcliffe was doing this. Now, I understand that it's very hard to divorce the club generally from the PSR requirements, right? There's a certain set of stuff until the squad costs rule comes in, and it's not going to come in next year. It might come in the next year afterwards. It is in UEFA terms. Until we get that, the playing side of things from the overall company, club, are quite tightly interlinked. Now, there's things in a PSR perspective that you don't have to calculate. You're right. So what you spend on the women's team or the academy or certain infrastructure projects. But all these people that work in marketing or finance or social or the cafeteria or whatever, they're basically included in the wage budget, right? Basically. And in fact, we can see it. If you go back to the 21-22 UEFA sustainability report, they broke it out And apparently, so Stephen Borson, the Manchester City propping financial analyst,
Very objective.
Yeah, totally independent analyst. Yeah, I did try to say this to him once. Like, you want to be taken seriously? You
it's
can't
not as if you have vested interest.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, he made a very good point about some of this previously when he's talking about how clubs work and think about profitability and sustainability. But he also reminded me that UEFA had done this one time, and I think he has some contacts at UEFA, and after they'd done that, the clubs were like, "Nuh-uh, you're not doing that again, because you've just given the game away." Like, we liked this opaqueness around our finances where we bundle in the football playing stuff with the non-football playing stuff, right? So you go back to 22-23, and you've got United's total wage budget at 364 million euros and 220 something million on the playing side of things. Now, convert it to pounds and then run the strategy forward a couple of years, and United's wage budget is quite a bit leaner now, but it seemed like the non-playing wage budget was not, right? So you've got Ratcliffe, private equity head, going, well, hang on a minute, we shouldn't be spending a single penny that we shouldn't be spending. That's where his mind's at, right? He's not quite on the legacy mindset yet, which he should be, because it's a legacy project, right? This is about showing how big his dick is, right?
That's something I wanted to discuss at one point as well.
Like the dichotomy here is really strong, right? So he's running on the company side the private equity playbook, which is strip everything down to the bone because you have to, because you're not pulling enough revenue in to make this company profitable, right? Fuck the consequences. We're just going to do that. And the second thing, I think we'll talk about in a bit more detail later, is to run the same playbook basically on transfers, which is to go lower end cheaper. Well, you can't be Manchester United and just sign a bunch of League Two cloggers. So what does that mean? It means young players, potential but unproven, and so on and so on and so on, and work your PSR problem out, because United have a massive PSR problem with £200 million worth of amortization this year, which I'm sure they'd like to halve that basically for a sustainable approach. So that's what he's doing. And it just completely butts heads with what you'd expect a football club of Manchester United's status and size to do, right? I mean, someone on Twitter this week said to me, because I was coming back to Borson, he'd said this before, actually. I don't think he said this, and I kind of agreed with him. I'm I feel uncomfortable agreeing with this guy.
A little dirty, that.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. He said, I don't think I've ever seen a football club run this football strategy, which is to buy younger players and outthink the market, right? So you're saying when you do that strategy, I'm cleverer than you guys out there. I can pick up the best young players that are totally undervalued, Moneyball style, and you guys can't do it. I'm going to do it better than you guys on a smaller budget. I'm I agree with you there. I don't think it's possible. And this is what the Ratcliffe strategy basically is. These two things: cut the non-football costs to the bone, thin as possible, and on the football side, while you work out the Antonys, the Maguires, the Casemiros, the Rashfords, and so on, work them off the books. You play a couple of years of playing it super lean on the football side of things.
Yeah, that's the part of it that I can't see working, and that's the worry that I have in the short term. Is it's all great, and we've seen this with Rasmus Højlund as well. It's all great to bring in great young talent, particularly if you're going to bring them in at value, so that you can sell them on. Dorgu is a great example already, I think.
Much better example, yeah.
Yeah, and the profile that they'll add to the team. For me, the difference is the reliance on you're putting on them immediately. It's not it's something Rafael Varane said in his piece with The Athletic, is that when he came into Real Madrid, there was no expectation for him to contribute right away. It was to sit and to learn. And for the Manchester United players, they're going straight in the deep end. I mean, Dorgu was straight in, first start, and then sent off, first start at Old Trafford. For me, that's the worrying part. Where do you supplement that with experience and quality to take the pressure off? You can't all be Bruno Fernandes, and that's all it is right now. That's what it feels like. And how sustainable is that? To me, it's not. And so you're going to have to compromise on that. But United don't have the finances to compromise on that. So to me, it's flawed unless you're accepting, and I don't think that they are accepting, that they're going to take their lumps to come out the other end of it.
Well, as I understand it, they're now budgeting for a kind of Europa League level budget. So they'll take the wage budget down to sub 150 million. So a fair bit lower than it was a few years ago. And that would place United at about 5th or 6th in terms of the wage budget structures in the Premier League. Kind of depends. I mean, you get this kind of weird thing where clubs who are in the Champions League can spend a lot more. Aston Villa are doing it now where they looks like their wage budget is about 120% of their revenue. They'll obviously get Champions League money this year, but that's part of the reason John Duran was sold, like balance the books out and so on. So yeah, it's really, really hard when you're, especially a club of United's size and stature, to get everyone to go, yeah, we're a Europa League club now at best. Right, and we won't be in the Europa League next year. We will be in nothing, the conference or the Champions League. And wow, that's feast or famine.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem is you have to sell this to a fan base that's already pissed off. So the lack of communication, something you discussed earlier in the week on the pod, is a problem. So for me, we've been told about the Project 2028 and things like that. And it was talked about in the Athletic midweek about the next 4 years of Europa League qualification. To me, how are you selling this to the fan base? So are you going to present Barada at some point to outline sort of the club's thinking on the realistic state the club finds itself now? So we have to learn to operate differently or think differently in the short term so we can come out the other end of this. To me, if you're not getting your messaging right so that fans understand, like I think we've been trying to understand the scale of the finances for a while now, and you and I have talked about this at length. I still don't think, despite all the information that keeps getting maybe briefed or leaked out there, or just by the fact that we have more financial expertise in football now, from Kieran Maguire and the likes of those kinds of people, they're not communicating the extent of the finances. So people aren't really getting it. So it's like, we'll spend this much this summer. Do we have any money to spend this summer? Like if we're getting linked to a player, where's that money coming from? So I just think you have to nail your messaging. Like part of this whole strategy.
Well, they're not doing it at all. There's no messaging.
I think with any corporate strategy, you have to have a communications plan. Like in what I do, if we're doing a project that has to be briefed to the public, you've got to have a communications plan so that you're nailing your messaging to mitigate the risks that come from that project. And that has to apply to this, right?
I used to be a consultant to a very large California-based silicon company. There's only a couple, so pick your poison there, where they had the usual sort of corporate stuff, right, going on. They'd make investments, they'd make divestitures, they'd hire people, they'd fire people, they'd make layoffs, and but one of the most important things was an annual investor relations conference where they'd communicate their plan, right? Now, part of the reason why we have more information on Manchester United than most Premier League clubs is it's a public company, right? This is listed. They file a K10 every quarter. It's all public. We can see almost all of it. Now, what we don't get is what the Premier League gets to see on PSR, right? So we're guesstimating a lot on that based on the public statements. And everyone freaks out when we're like, oh, hang on a minute. They were given a £40 million,
Yeah, with no context. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah, you can have that one. We don't know what that really was.
Why were they the only club given this COVID?
And so a bunch
allowance.
of conspiracies come about because the Premier League
cartel,
absolutely, the red cartel, blah blah, and it's all nonsense, of course, right? They would have, United would have filed that, made a bunch of arguments. In fact, the Premier League didn't even ask for a preview, which is what they've done with Forest, Villa, Everton, and say, hey, we think you're a bit closer the line here. We'd like to see your account 6 months ahead of time to give you some guidance on whether you're going to be in trouble or not, right? They didn't ask for that with United. So either you go down the route of saying, hey, they're completely biased in United's favour, or United presented a very strong argument for the losses they'd made there. But anyway, right, the point being we get a reasonable view of what is happening on the financial side of the club. along with what we think they're doing on the cost side and what you can pretty much see on the wages side. I mean, it's take Capology with a pinch of salt and all of that. They claim they have good data. A lot of people in the biz say they don't.
Nobody reads their disclaimer that says that it's entirely resourced from
public
articles. Yeah. It could have been taken from the Mirror.
They claim they have analysts that go check it, and I just don't quite believe it.
I'd say Football Mojo is more accurate, so at least than Capology, personally.
Well, the one thing actually, like when I kept going on about, I didn't believe the number they had on Marcus Rashford's salary. No intention of relitigating that whole debate here, but part of the reason why I didn't is because I didn't believe the structure of wages would put Marcus at like 17% of United's wage budget. I just didn't believe it, right? Don't believe the raw data. If you don't believe the raw data, you start questioning the sources, right?
I also, like anyone, you and I both dabbled in media and journalistic, and we talked to all sorts of people, and we all know, or we know that when wages are reported, they're reported at their fullest extent. So it includes of bonuses. It's never really the basic wage. So this is like, if they're reporting 375, this is if Marcus, or 325 even, it's if Marcus is hitting all of his, for any player. It's like Bruno Fernandes or Capology. The biggest thing that they always miss is that United have a 25% reduction in wages for not being in the Champions League, but that's never reported by the media in their wage reporting or on websites like Capology. So
no, that's right. Yeah, I mean, if Marcus hits all his goals and you're in the Champions League and whatever personal bonuses he has and trophy bonuses, and if he's nobbing Ratcliffe's daughter and like yada yada yada, all of these things, he makes the bonus, right? So,
well, it's the same as Højlund's fee. Just to make like an additional point with a transfer fee, his is only 64 million up front. It's 8 million in add-ons. I doubt he's been getting any add-ons apart from appearances so far. No. It wouldn't be much more than 64.
It is interesting, actually, while we're talking about this. Casemiro is also often reported at 70. I wonder how much of that is Champions League qualifications and or victories rather than appearances. I'm not sure he'd have hit any of those so far. We won't see till later in the day, and United never break it out. Aston Villa, by the way, just since we're on this, do break stuff out in high amounts of detail, which is interesting because they've got a bunch of like billionaire American owners, right? At least one of their owner is. I mean, total net worth of Villa owners is like 15 billion. They're seriously wealthy. They're just capped in their ambition by the size of the club.
It's funny. Someone said to me about Jim Ratcliffe. We were talking just about the people saying like the INEOS cutbacks on their sporting projects means he has no money. But he is so wealthy, this person was saying to me, that in his experience in the business world, people like that, their net worth is actually hard to quantify because they have so many toes dipped in different pools that their wealth is just like way beyond what we can grasp.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure it's not all tied up in INEOS anyway, which is a 60 billion euro a year revenue. And we think he owns about 60% alongside his two co-founders. It's a bit hard to tell. They have a public holding company, which has almost no revenue in it, and a bunch of private companies, which you just can't see, basically.
It's the whole point of funneling your money to all different places for your own
I'm
personal
sure has
purposes.
Extensive property portfolio and owns a couple of islands all over the place. Yeah. And he paid himself in the last reporting year a £500 million dividend. Just because you do. I mean, I was going to do that last year. I didn't quite hit my targets on my new company. Not quite. I was a little bit off on the revenue targets. I'm not paying myself £500 million this year. Maybe next. We'll see.
I chose not to take dividends. I thought I'd follow the INEOS model.
I'm not sure Wayne appreciated it, but I did joke with him that NQAT is a business. It doesn't make a lot of revenue, folks, but it's still more profitable than Manchester United. Facts. And this is where we come full circle. This is where Sir Jim is trying to get back to, because that's the way he thinks. He thinks we need to get back to profitability in order to grow from there. The problem is it's a hell of a gamble on like stripping back on all the functions within the club. Are any of those actually necessary? Any of those potentially revenue generating? are any of those underutilized assets that could be revenue generating but actually badly managed, which I think probably MUTV is. I think you got a billion fans that should be making fucking loads of money. And I remember I had this conversation with someone who in the club a few years ago, and I was like, why are you charging for this? There should be zero friction. Like, if you've got a billion people, even if you can't show the Premier League games until a day afterwards, broadcasting restrictions, academy games, history, interviews, all stuff, fans are going to love this, right?
Well, not every academy game is even broadcast. Some of the academy games we aren't even getting broadcast. And this is not under 16s. This is like some of the 18s games, a couple of the 21s.
And no broadcast because they've cut back on costs.
Yeah. It's crazy. We have such good academy coverage now on social media, but some of those people who dedicate their lives to covering the academy because they're so passionate about it, they can't even view that. It's insane. It's insane.
Madness.
MUTV should be a must for any fan who can access it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Their pricing structure is mad as well. I know we're going to slight diversion here, but there's you can pay a monthly fee to MUTV and don't tell anyone, said Jim, because he'll cut this one off. You can buy the MUTV app in the App Store for $4.99 and use the same login on your TV, which is exactly what I do. So I could pay $9.99 a month and give them 120 of my fine pounds, dollars, euros, whatever per year. Or I can give them $4.99 a year and get the same thing. What are you doing, folks? Madness.
I find it crazy with all the media people and ex-players that we have that we don't have more coverage on MUTV. Not even like a fake sort of set up studio show where they're just talking about United. Like, the stories write themselves, and it gives the club a chance to work against media narratives, but they just don't do it. Like, even the way they don't protect Ruben Amorim from certain things, and the way they don't clamp down on, like, let's just say Samuel Luckhurst, the way his stories are generally pretty negatively briefed from the dressing room, whatever you want to call it. There's no pushback. It's really strange. It's like the club does everything it can not to help itself.
It's the final chapter of the college football playoff.
It comes down to this.
Miami's unmatched grit and tenacity through the postseason has led them home. The national title now within reach.
They are confident. They are battle-tested.
Undefeated Indiana, led by Chris Signetti and Heisman winner Fernando Mendoza, have the chance to take home their first title and claim college football immortality.
The most remarkable turnaround in the history of college football.
The College Football Playoff National Championship presented by AT&T. Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Dead Man's Wire, the new film from Roquet Entertainment. Dead Man's Wire is the incredible true story of the 1977 kidnapping that turned an aspiring entrepreneur into an outlaw folk hero. Directed by legendary filmmaker Gus Van Sant, Dead Man's Wire stars Bill Skarsgård, Dacre Montgomery, Carrie Elways, and Myha'la, with Coleman Domingo and Al Pacino. Now playing in select theaters everywhere January 16th.
It's just one example of an underutilized asset, right? And if you're cutting back on all these resources internally, are you cutting back on some things that are really important, right? I mean, it's part of the reason why United's such a big club. One, really big commercial department, and it's organic. They have to go out and find their own commercial. They don't just happen to have a whole bunch of things that just happen to be Abu Dhabi related, right? So they have all the costs within the company. So legal, finance, stuff, regulatory reporting that you have to do with the SEC and so on. Like, all of this stuff is in a separate company, Manchester City. Javier Tebas, La Liga chairman, reporting City to the European Commission today, saying they basically got state financing because they're taking all these costs out of their core business and putting it in the parent company, or even he actually accused them of having shell companies that weren't even the parent company. I mean, for sure, just as one simple example, if you don't believe me on this one, check how much legal bills were. Premier League's legal bill last year, £50 million, right? Most of that on City, but also Forest and Everton, mostly a little bit less. Most of it fighting City. City's legal bill, couple of chaps in the dog and duck, apparently, right? I mean, it's criminal. Anyway, United have to finance that all within the group. So Jim has not yet decided to run the same playbook. I mean, there are four clubs within the Manchester United's cinematic universe here. We're going to take over MCU because the actual one is crap these days. So we're going to take it over. I know. Shocking, Adam. But
it's fine. It's fine. I'm proud MCU. But to talk about the commercial stuff, one of the things that surprises me is that they haven't pushed on with the things that they've done. Like, I know we've talked about the commercial revenues falling off a cliff and stuff, but one of the things that Ed Woodward and the team did, and they trailblazed in things that you could sponsor for. So we're the noodle partner in Asia. They led the way on that. And now teams have caught up, don't get me wrong. But that's the new challenge for, if I've got his name right, it's Mark Armstrong, correct?
Yeah.
It's to make United that trendy brand again, the way that they've, like PSG have got the sponsorship with Jordan, which is really I'm wearing a Jordan hat right now. It's really cool that you want to make United like the way they've done the Adidas adverts in this past year. That's the sort of thing they should be capitalizing on. Making
that was part of the story
brand.
that sort of came out, that they were going to go back to blue chip brands, because that was the old playbook of David Gill, and United were looking for blue chip sponsors because it's a blue chip club. The Glazers and Ed Woodward came along and said, hang on a minute, if we chop this up, we'll get more for our bucks. And in a sense, they were right? They said, we're going to have your Thai noodle sponsor, because they could hide the embarrassing stuff, Yeah, so they had 15 telecom sponsors.
Money's money.
Money's money,
right? Like, it doesn't matter whether, with people have criticized United's Saudi telecom sponsorship, but that's not a state. To make that clear, that's not a state sponsorship.
It's a lot. It's about 70% state owned, but
it's not the same.
Yeah,
they're not owned by Saudi Arabia. That's the difference. Yeah. It's a little bit different in your interest.
No, and whether United go back to premium sponsors and brands as part of this strategy will be interesting to see if they can pull that off. Of course, premium brands and sponsors, like they have front of shirt now with Qualcomm, the Snapdragon, you would say is a premium sponsor. It's one of the world's two largest silicon companies, basically. And we'll see if that plays out in other areas of the business they're going to do that. Mark Armstrong, that would suggest he's going to do that. Paris did a brilliant job of Ici Paris, of branding it. They owned Paris. This was a Paris brand. They went head first into that. It might have been owned by Qatar, and all their sponsors were Qatari. Surprising, look down the A to Z list of sponsors. Nothing. Q, 75 of them. Nothing. I'm only half joking here.
Yeah, but the messaging matters. We know that. People eat up the messaging rather than the context. And it's the same the way certain state-owned clubs message and brief out things, and their fans will just believe it, hook, line, and sinker, regardless of the facts at hand. And that's what we'll see play out with a certain case. But with the commercial interest, for me, I liked in what you mentioned about how they align themselves now going forward. Do they lean into the tech aspect and cool new things? And that's what's interesting also about with the stadium. Will that sort of reflect the same thing? Will they do certain partnerships?
Yeah, and I think different media partnerships and brand partnerships and tech partnerships. When the stadium gets built, I'm sure that's part of the thinking and part of the reason why a new stadium is probably preferable for leadership than a refurbishment of the old one, or at least a refurbishment in the way you might think about it. If you did a Camp Nou or Bernabeu style refurbishment, I mean, that's still £1 billion, right? So, and you'd have to strip it down and be away from the ground for years and years and years and so on and so on. And there's real pain associated with that. And Barcelona, clearly for emotional reasons, felt they couldn't do that. Real Madrid got really lucky in that 2 of their years of being away from Bernabeu were during COVID and they weren't playing there
Seeing
anyway.
the benefits now with the shoot up in their revenues compared to the other clubs, it's night and day.
It comes back to what I was talking about their transfer strategy earlier. And I was talking to someone on Twitter who's like, when I was like, I don't think anyone's done this, like played the transfer market like this and won. And he was like, well, hang on, Real Madrid barely spent a penny from 2020 onwards. I was like, true, but it's Real Madrid. They could sign David Alaba for free.
They can just make players wait.
Make them wait. I mean, he still paid them all massive bonuses. Kylian Mbappe might only be on £500,000 a week, which was a massive pay cut on what he was earning at Paris Saint-Germain. He did get £150 million or
you
euros.
Pocket the transfer fee yourself. That's the difference. Yeah.
So I don't think that's analogous at all to what United are trying to do. There's some analogies with Paris on the commercial side. I think we may see something different. It's very, very hard to play that premium strategy when you're out of the Champions League. Like that, it's just truthful, right? Premium sponsors want to be where all the action is, like the Europa League and even worse, the Conference League doesn't attract the same kind of level of focus or attention.
It reminds me of the sort of signings, not that it's the same transfer strategy, but the signings Liverpool were making when they were a Europa League side about a decade ago. Not a decade ago, sorry, during the Sir Alex era, when they were making those kind of like Southampton level signings, when they were the Ricky Lamberts.
Yeah.
That was the difference. And that's one of the worries for me is how are they perceived externally, how are they perceived by players they want to sign when they have to lower their gaze.
Yeah,
because of their Europa League level finance strategy.
And United played this game where they were paying Champions League wages without being in the Champions League. It's caught up with us now. Can't do it anymore. That's where the one thing I agree with Sir Jim on. Like United just can't keep doing this, right? There's no way around it. You can't. There's not enough owner finances. Yeah. Owner financing can't solve that problem for you. They have, and they paid £60 million in interest on Ten Hag signings last year. It's not just interest. It's mad. It's absolutely bonkers. So I agree with him on that. You got to stop that. Like if in isolation, that would be fine. Unfortunately, it's not in isolation. It comes along with massive amount of debt, the fall in revenues, being out of the Champions League, having to get these expensive players off the books without losing twice. Like, so not getting an impairment charge on these to get them off the books, not having to pay them off to get them off the books. Like it's incredibly painful and a really difficult strategy, one that fans are not going to understand.
Open heart surgery, is that what we're calling it?
Well, we did that already. It's just we ripped out the heart and replaced it with a hot potato. And we're like, that's good.
Yeah, with more parts that needed a transplant anyway,
I mentioned at the top when we were just opening the show that there are protests planned by the 58. I haven't always agreed with the 58's overall vision, I don't think. I say I don't think because I'm not really sure that they're very clear. They seem very... by the way, I think the work they've done on fan engagement is brilliant, right? No one else has done that in the 20 years of the Glazer ownership. They've rallied fans around to a single cause in the way that the Supporters Trust or other fan groups couldn't do. So you had Supporters Trust, very sort of official channels trying to build a dialogue. And I think you do need this for certain things. You can't do that to get the owners out. And then you had the kind of Manchester Education Committee, more militant wing, break into the stadium. And the 58 have managed to bring these two things together. And so I think their activism has been fantastic around the takeover. I kept tweeting at them and anyone aligned with them. So who's your preferred owner now? And they dodged that question when asked it on Bloomberg. And they just equivocated, which told me if you haven't got an answer for that, when there's a state party in the bidding, that really they were just looking at the sports washing riches and go, yeah, that's our problem solved. Right?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem with the full sale only thing, right?
Full sale to whom is the only thing that matters, right?
I find it hard to speak on anything related to the 1958 and to even to what MUST is doing because I'm not a fan on the ground. And I feel like your lived experience is very different from mine as an fan on the ground.
I'm not a fan on the ground either. So,
but he's still a mank abroad. Whereas, like, I feel like the online supporter base, which I'm obviously a part of by comparison, I think our role is a little bit different. I think our role is sort of more education, understand the issues at hand. So my issue with 1958 is much the same as yours, is that you can say full sale only, but I asked the same question that you did, is that there wasn't one. So when you say that Sir Jim kept the Glazers or chose to, I don't think it was a choice. I think this was the lesser of two evils. This was the best of a bunch of bad decisions. So if you have a pathway to a full sale, even if it's not a guaranteed one, and it's not, because the Glazers can still say no, Sir Jim has the first option in the 18-month window, which I believe is in August. I think the documents were filed in February of last year. So I've tried to get the specifics after posting that video and having, a share of criticism for what you and I said in that. I think this is still the best scenario we could have ended up in, because it's the best pathway to the Glazers exiting.
I think it's the only scenario.
Yeah.
I think it's the only scenario because global interest rates are not coming down to the level they were in 2010s where money was free. And so private equity has a very different relationship. So you even saw Todd Boehly at the FT football conference today. Basically, he didn't say it should be a closed shop, but he kind of skirted around that.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, he was interviewed as the closing keynote interview. He didn't say we want no relegation, but he did not say it either. And he was basically skirting around this idea. Well, I guess one of the main financial takeaways would be he thinks that the Premier League will be at the stage where they do a global streaming deal. Now, whether that is selling the rights on a global basis to Netflix or Apple or whoever, right? Or more likely doing Prem Plus, building their own streaming, maybe with technology.
Yeah, I don't know why they haven't already planned to.
Because everyone's drunk on the guaranteed money, right? So
that's true.
So and Boehly, one of the few insightful things he ever says was owners will have to take a share of the risk in this, and it would be highly risky for a massive reward, because at the moment they monetize a very small pool of the global number of people that like the Premier League compared to a very, very, very big pool you could get with a kind of liquid, elastic pricing strategy.
Apple TV's deal with the MLS is the same sort of thing we're sort of framing it as.
Yeah. Apple TV with the MLS was a bit more, it was traditional broadcaster, but with a global footprint, right? So they will stream it anywhere. I mean, no one cares about the MLS in America.
It just gets them the chance to sow the seeds, though.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if you imagine Netflix do this deal, they would charge they would have Netflix Plus with the Premier League, so they'd have to charge a bit extra. So let's say it's $30 in the States and it's $5 in China and it's 40 Aussie dollars in Australia or whatever it is. They'd pick a number that they thought was sustainable and growable. That would be one model of doing it. Global deal. Maybe go the full extent. The Premier League own which they already have Premier League broadcasting, right? They already support countries that don't have a broadcast deal. Yeah. When I was refusing to pay Sky for a while, I could watch New Zealand's coverage, which was the Premier League's official channel, just VPN into New Zealand and watch the Premier League's own coverage for like $50 New Zealand dollars a year. It was unbelievably good deal and a great, fantastic service because you could watch every single game simultaneously and catch up on anything forever. And they had all these it's great. Premier League Studios, they do a fantastic job and almost no one sees it, right? Well, and so that's the genesis of what could be. And I'm sure the Glazers are looking at that and going, fucking hell, that's not just a gold mine. That is the motherlode of gold that could be there.
Well, I think we're seeing with most global sports. The NBA's just negotiated their TV rights in recent times. The AFL here, on a much smaller scale, has done it. I think what we're seeing is the apex of the TV broadcasting value. I think we're heading towards that streaming model. I think what people probably don't fully grasp, and this is completely understandable as to why they wouldn't, is that the streamers just have so much more money. And for example, you would know this as well as anyone. Netflix is the equivalent of having TV when we grew up. These days in America, everyone has Netflix because it's like having television. It's like just having that normal television. So I think that's the direction we're heading in, and that might be the pipeline into the Premier League launching.
And it's
their
not
own
just the
broadcast.
revenue that the streamers have, right? So old style BBC, ITV, whatever your public broadcaster was, they had a certain amount of revenue. They couldn't really break that. They're a company, sometimes a public company. Netflix has a valuation. I'm not sure what the stock price is. So let's just say it's 400 billion, right? Like that, and they might have a certain amount of revenue, but they can play with that market capitalization in order to invest in a new thing. They've done that for years in content, right? They spent way more than they're bringing in revenue to build up a library of content, so that on the back end of this J curve, once they've got the hundreds and hundreds of millions of subscribers, they can start to increase the price. And it's now
we've also seen them launch into sports. The Jake Paul, what was it? The Jake Paul, who was it? The Jake Paul fight. Yeah, the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. Yeah. That was a raging success for them. Yeah. And they've made it clear that they are moving into sports. Yeah. So that might be a hint at what we're looking at. Amazon are probably the only one that can financially muscle in with them. I just don't think Apple has the appetite.
They definitely have the money. They don't have, it doesn't seem like they're doing anything other than premium stuff.
They've cut back on even their TV investments. So yeah, I know we've gotten a bit off track and probably people are like, what? But I think it matters.
Yeah, it's in the same world of strategy.
This is future state.
Yeah. So the Glazers, when they took over, there's no way that they saw the thing that really mattered. Like there were two pivot points that really mattered in broadcasting revenue for the Premier League. The first one was that Sky and BT decided to fight it out for internet and TV customers. BT, the local telecoms provider, decided to get into the TV game, and they went head to head. Sky was a monopolist, basically, and because they bought their own competition early in the 90s, called they were called B Sky B because there was a BSB satellite broadcaster they bought out. Anyway, so these two butt heads. They go at it. They compete on bidding for the Premier League as the water cooler moment, the thing that brings everyone together in the way that linear TV used to do and doesn't do anymore. And it really inflated the value of the Premier League. Right, the Glazers did not know about that at all. They got so lucky with that. There's nothing about brilliant strategy or Ed Woodward's diversification and sponsorship or anything like that. They got so lucky on broadcast. And then the second inflection point, which is a bit more in the control of the Premier League clubs and the Premier League itself, which was to really aggressively market this product, leveraging the power and the history of the British state and its globalness to go worldwide and sell the rights to everyone before other leagues did. La Liga could have done this, Serie A could have done this, League 1 could have done this, but Bundesliga, they all could have done the same strategy. They didn't. Premier League actively went and marketed this as a product, right? And packaged it up.
That League One's having now, just getting TV rights done.
They can't even do it.
I believe they started the season without a TV rights still in place.
They did. Actually, John Texter, I don't know whether you saw his quote last week. He's the Crystal Palace Leon Botafogo owner, American business person. And he said, we'll never get a TV deal. It won't be worth anything because everyone knows the winner before a ball is kicked. It's Paris Saint-Germain. They have the wealth of a state. It's basically cheating. It was more frank than any single Premier League owner has ever been about City or Newcastle, right? They might say it behind closed doors or to each other.
Only when they vote. That's the only time I feel like we really get a clear picture of who sits with who.
Yeah. So, all of which builds a picture of, I think there's a massive amount of undervalue in Premier League rights and value, right now. There is for Manchester United potentially as the premier club within the Premier League. It's just we're in a really, really bad state right now. Now, how are the Glazers thinking about that? Are they thinking, we think we see all of this? Do they see round corners? Because they don't really strike me as those kind of people that think particularly strategically about any of this stuff. Or are they going, well, so Jim has basically set the price. It's $33 a share. We've got a guaranteed floor on that. We have this exclusivity period. Global interest rates are quite high still. Can't really see private equity getting involved yet. It's too early for any of the tech companies to bid. The only other option is a state bid that didn't materialize last time. There's some issues with that. So Jim could basically block that effectively by taking up his right of first refusal. So Jim's the player here. We can take another £4 billion and fuck off back to Florida, right?
They can just give up their majority, right?
They could do that.
They could just keep their money in. They could halve. I know that'll upset people to not have them completely out, but they could be like, let him rebuild the value. We'll still be getting our money in.
Yeah. Well,
but
the problem with that one is that it's very, very hard for any owner in those circumstances to pay down that debt, right? So if that was the case, if they sold off another 10%, right? And so Jim effectively becomes the majority owner, and he's got the B shares, the same as they have.
He doesn't have that incentive, right?
He would have no incentive, right? Even worse, he has a disincentive because
it'd be like you paying off my debt, so to speak.
Yeah, because we have a shared, I own 28% of your house, right? You've got a massive mortgage on it. You go, well, if you buy another 10% of my house, will you pay off my mortgage? And I'll go, yeah, of course I will. Yeah. And then you'd go, well, I'm not going anywhere now. This house is suddenly worth, I've got all this equity in this house. It's really hard.
I think it's quite easy to debunk all these arguments about why haven't they paid down the debt? Why have they kept the Glazers around? I just don't understand why people don't want to take it on. Is it that they would have to admit that the bid that they backed, or they just, it's okay to admit maybe we don't understand. I feel like I've had to read so much, even since you and I last talked, I've tried to read the SEC filings even more closely to understand the clause, is it the drag on? So I don't know. But also one of the other things with the Manchester United sale is that the valuations of sporting franchises, clubs, whatever you want to call them, have swelled worldwide. And you've seen it in the NBA, the NFL. So the point there is only a handful of people on the planet who can buy them outright. So we're talking about Britain's richest man is one of the few people with the ability to buy them that can buy them without a conglomerate.
Yeah.
And then in a conglomerate, there's a ton of issues with buying in a conglomerate because,
as we see with Chelsea, right?
Who's your face of the project? Who's actually a financier? Like the whole thing with the Saudis and Todd Boehly that has been speculated. I'm only saying it's speculation, but it's pretty easily traceable. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding that we've still got to work through there.
For sure. Sports franchises are incredibly expensive, especially American ones, because they're on closed leagues. The average valuation of an MLS franchise now is £700 million, right? That's double what the Saudis paid for Newcastle. Newcastle, now it looks like, given they pumped money into it and they're now a successful edge of Champions League club, that probably looks like 300 million was a good deal. 700 million for, I don't know, Real Salt Lake or San Jose Earthquakes. San Jose, yeah, whatever. That's a shit deal, right? I think Sounders, where I am, I think their wage budget is like $30 million, something like that.
They've been around a long time.
It's like a championship level, though, right? A championship club that's worth $3 billion, right? And it's madness, right? But generally speaking, sports franchises, because it's globalized, because media is globalized, because there's a promise of streamers, because sport is the only thing that really brings people together at the same time anymore, right? Nothing else does. We're all streaming, right? We watch things at different times. Maybe people talk about TV real time. I'm not sure. I don't think they do.
No. There's still a couple of water cooler shows, but there aren't many.
Yeah, I'm not part of that, right? So I totally miss that. But
I'm in the binge. I'm in the binge era. Right. That's what I prefer.
Yeah. So sport has a value, an intrinsic value. It was always undervalued, and it was undervalued compared to we're talking now. We have a certain amount of viewers. Certain amount of listeners. Manchester United don't monetize this at all. They don't get a penny from it, right? We're talking about Manchester United. They don't earn anything from it. And it's really hard for you to... I guess we could do a podcast about Coca-Cola. They wouldn't earn anything from it, but why would we, right? We'd buy a can of Coke and drink it and they'd make money from it, right? And the old way was you'd go to the stadium, there may be one game a week on, they'd get hardly any money from broadcast and they'd have to share that money with everybody in the 4 divisions, right? And so it was going to the game. That's the thing that mattered. Now that is so far from what matters. Like, we may be going back around because we capped out on broadcast and commercial, and we have to now increase the match day thing. We'll see, but the promise of this massive global expansion in media is there, waiting. It's just United aren't quite there to really capitalize on it when it happens yet.
So circling back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm curious, like your take on is there a certain thing that you would like to see INEOS change in their approach? Is there a particular thing that you would maybe buy a little bit of goodwill or just be better, safer for the club as a strategy? Like, I'm just curious to hear what.
It's funny, I was talking to someone tonight. I was just out and I was at a group of finance people. It's what I like to do on a Thursday night. I hang out with mid-market private equity folks. Just for shits and giggles.
Just the finance bros.
Yeah, and someone said this to me. If you took over Manchester United tomorrow, what would you do? And I was like, well, actually, like the old style of answer would be it's boys own, boys own comics. That is, I'd buy all the best players on the world. Now that's not true anymore, because actually my first choices would not be a football choice per se, because there's very little wiggle room for United in the football side of things. You have to make good decisions about incoming and outgoing of sure, but the wiggle room is hardly anything. If I had the choice right now, I'd pay down all of the debt. It saves United £60 million a year, pay off all the transfers early and negotiate lower fees. Like, because you've got the cash, why not? Like, you still amortize the cost, right? And like, you'd save a whole bunch of money. I'd do that. Can't do it until they get full ownership. So for INEOS, it's like, it is really, really, really about being like, play their cost-cutting strategy, fine, communicate, just talk to people. Say, this is what we're doing. Here's our North Star. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's our path to get there. There's no secret sauce here. They're not giving anything away, right? They're not telling all the rival clubs what their budget is for the year. They're just saying, hey, fans, stakeholders, players, this is where we're trying to get to, and here's our path to getting there. And the next 2 years are likely to be a little bit of cost cutting on the playing side, right? What does cost cutting on the playing side mean? It means probably some of the higher wages earners will leave. Like, you can see them all listed.
If you're not meeting the value. Yeah.
Right. They're not going to bring any value. So you're trying to get zero impairment charge, ideally, right? On Anthony and Casemiro in particular. And if you decide that Højlund is not it, not going to get £50 million for him, so take as much as you can. Maybe even a loan, although that doesn't really benefit anyone. We talked about it before. You loan people without getting a fee. You're basically subsidizing someone else's playing staff. So you get them off the books, the highest earners that you can. You bring the wage down to a reasonable amount. The highest earners that perform, like Anthony and Casemiro, we don't lose anything by losing those players if you can get them away. You let a few players go who are out of contract. Heaton, Evans, Lindelof all go. You get bigger fee as you can if Amorim and also Jim don't want Marcus Rashford in the squad. You get the biggest fee you possibly can. That's a really hard one because of the wages, right? So Villa have that option. I'd say right now it's touch and go. They probably won't execute on it if they're not in the Champions League, I'd imagine, because they're right at the top of their wage bracket. If they are, there's an option. Maybe they will. You see what you can do there, and then you try and find the best possible younger players that you can bring in on your wages, right? What else can you do, right? And then on the commercial side of things, yeah, you can try and build some longer-term brand partnerships. I think the short-term real injection of cash seems really hard. You can't get a stadium sponsor because there's no new stadium. No one's going to sponsor Old Trafford for anything more than a pennies, basically, because it will always be Old Trafford, right? So until there's a new stadium, there's nothing there. Even those rights are quite low. The world's biggest is something like just over £20 million.
Yeah, there's a bit of a misconception around it for sure.
Yeah, because it's not in people's faces all the time. It's only match day, and it's only in the newspapers.
Like Spotify's deal with Barcelona is actually not that big. It's just long.
Yeah.
So the worth of the deal is huge.
Same with Emirates at Arsenal, right? The front shirt is 5 times bigger than the stadium rights, right? Even more than 5 times bigger, actually. So for understandable reasons, right? What do people do? They want it in your face, right? That's the players. That's not the real estate, right? So So anyway, to answer your question, there's very little wiggle room. I think cost cutting's not bad, but you have to talk to people about it. You have to say why you're doing this. You have to make sure if you're cost cutting, you don't do, which is what corporates tend to do. They put a red line through a bunch of teams and they just go, well, we're just going to delete that team and that team and that team. Because there will be really talented people across the business that you want to keep. And I don't know how they're doing this. I have no insight at all. I suspect they're just going, media team gone, bye. Catering team gone, bye. And it's not really very strategic. Tried to do new sponsorship deals. What else could you do? If now, this is a left field one, but I think perfectly doable. If Sir Jim is feeling fairly flush with this year's dividend that he's going to pay himself from INEOS, it won't be 500 million, but let's say it's a bit less because they're having some market challenges at the moment. He could personally buy from Manchester United, Carrington and the Cliff, maybe even Old Trafford. That's a bit of a stretch, but definitely those two, right? He can sell them back. He can sign over a 999-year lease for a rent of £1 per year if he wanted, and inject a bunch of cash that way. That's a left field way of doing it.
That, to me, is something I probably think we haven't talked about enough. Not specifically that, but what his idea for his legacy is. To me, it's not tearing apart the fabric of the club. I know that. No. I know
it feels
that these
like
decisions,
it, but I'm sure it's not.
And you and I know someone who's personally affected by the changes that have been made. You know them well, but it's not. To me, it's never about that. I think his legacy piece is in how he'll leave the club after his ownership or after when he passes. It's that stadium redevelopment project. So whether it's also included what you're saying about buying Carrington, having a lease that lasts far beyond his lifetime, that to me is going to be his legacy. I'm curious to whether there'll be more of a comms plan after, for example, a purchase agreement. So this is what we outlined for the future. They took their licks then, but now that they have full control, this is what they announce as a public display of what the project is or what the vision for the future of the club is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's announced in lieu with the redevelopment. But I just think it's like, why would INEOS, and Sir Jim in particular, invest their own money to not take full control eventually? Yeah. It doesn't. It makes zero sense for someone who's made as much money as he's made. It makes no sense not to follow through, particularly at the floor of the price, as you said. To me, it's just a question of whether the Glazers are trying to dig in for something more. But I just don't see. I think in terms of the apex value of the club, in terms of what they'd get in a sale, I think we're just about there, irrespective of the current standing.
Yeah. All right. That seems like a good piece to wrap this one up. Yeah. I mean,
hopeful.
It's brutal this week because there's 200 real people that are losing their jobs who are not on superstar salaries.
The hyper-capitalism of it. Everyday people paying for the mistakes of billionaires.
It's horrendous. I mean, absolutely horrendous. And we are full late-stage capitalism. We've had this community asset, absolutely milked for 20 years, driven into the ground. And we've got this petrochemicals billionaire non-dom, like offshore Jim, as Kieran Maguire likes to call him.
I'll take it over human rights abusing state owners. So
I mean, hey,
each their own.
Best are a bad bunch, and best is stretching.
No clean billionaires.
Apart from me, I'm a billionaire in Zimbabwean dollars or rubles.
Don't even think I'd make it there, but
I'm not even sure actually. I'm guessing, but I don't know. Probably not actually. Fuck knows.
I'm rich.
How much is a ruble? All right, we've stretched this far enough. Hope that was interesting discussion about the cuts, the strategy, where we may be going next, and the opportunities, and how difficult it is to get there. We could probably do this every week in a finance show about football or something like that. Right,
finance for Patreons only, for the real nitty gritty.
One day. All right, Adam, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed.
Everyone, bye now. Have a good one.